I am Jay Moeller. I was born at St. Luke's Hospital in Davenport, Iowa. Our family residence was in Bettendorf, Iowa, which is a suburb of Davenport. I attended public schools in Bettendorf. It was about 1.5 miles from our home to the school. And as a general rule, I rode a tricycle with my lunch basket hung on behind the seat. Just one hill, and that was easy. I always carried the typical lunch, a peanut butter sandwich with jelly, and I won't eat them to this day. Dorothy was born 3.5 years after I was, and when I was in kindergarten, I brought home whooping cough for her, and she almost expired, but she's fine and doing okay. In grade school, the typical boy wore knickers with high boots, and we had a slot in the boot for a knife. During recess and over the noon hour, we frequently played mumlet peg. When Dorothy started school, she was too young to go to the public school, but Dad arranged for her to have kindergarten in the Catholic school, which was only 1 mile. It was on the way to my school, and I used to be quite envious of her in the wintertime that she didn't have to go as far as I did. The Depression hit us in 1932. Christmas Eve day of 1932, my dad came home from work early, and that was the only time I've seen him cry. The bank had closed. So we almost lost our home, and things were very tight at that time. When school was out in the summer of '33, Dad said he couldn't afford to feed me, and I would spend the summer on the farm with his brother, Uncle Walter. But it so happened that Uncle Walter married Aunt Sophie, who was my mother's sister, so they treated me as another child. They had an older girl and a younger boy, and I enjoyed my time on the farm. I tried my hand at milking, but it was more fun to spray the cats, and so I was relieved of my job milking, but I had to carry the milk from the barn over to the separator house, and then Aunt Sophie would separate it so she could make butter, and then I carried the skim milk over to the pig trough. You should have heard those pigs squeal whenever they saw me coming. It was quite an experience. I got to do quite a few things with the mules. They were always afraid the horses would spook on me, but I was able to cultivate corn. It was planted checked at that time, so it was a bumpy ride. When I asked how I would know when it was time to come home, Uncle Walter said mules will stop at the gate so that you can do it. I did get to use the mules to scatter manure. I turned too tight one time and tipped the full load over. The mules just stood there and looked back at me, and I knew what they were thinking. One of the more interesting things, Uncle Walter had the prize bull in Scott County, and he was a mean son of a gun. He had a big chain hanging from his nose, which was to keep him from going through the fence. But one day when I was there, the neighbors called that the bull was out and loose again. At that time, most of the farm yards were all fenced, so we got in the truck and went looking for him. And when we found him, Uncle Walter said, "I'll show him how to get home." He took his 12-gauge shotgun and pointed it out the window at the bull. It so turned out that it was loaded with rock salt instead of any lead shot. So when he hit that bull in the hip with that rock salt, he knew just where he was going to go. And he got right back into his yard. The following year, when Dad asked if I wanted to go to the farm again, I just couldn't wait. Those were the two best summers of my youth. In 1935, Dad got a job in Des Moines, and we moved to Des Moines. We moved in January, and it was after a tremendous snowstorm, so that the roads, well, alongside the roads, the snow was as high as the top of the car. Dorothy and I were in the back seat, and we had our canary in a cage between us. That bird sang all the way to Des Moines and then never sang again. In Des Moines, I went to Perkins grade school to finish 5th and 6th grades, and then went on to Roosevelt Junior High and high school. Things were quite different then. I was on the rifle team at high school. We kept our guns and ammunition in the school locker. The coach would take us in the school van after school to the rifle range, and we'd do our shooting, get back in the van, he'd take us back to school, we'd put our guns and whatever ammunition we had left over in our school locker and head for home. I was very fortunate. I got my first rifle on my 5th birthday, but the best birthday was my 12th birthday when I got a Model A. Now, I drove it quite a bit, but once, I think it was the 3rd time that I got stopped, they told Dad he'd go to jail next time. So that was the end of my rides then. So I tried to rebuild the motor. Eugene, which was Uncle Walter's boy, was quite a mechanic, and he helped me, but we didn't get the motor back so it would run. When it came time for me to get my driver's license, the garage came out and got the car, took it to the garage, put in a new motor, and brought it back to the house, $45. You couldn't believe it. At that time, Dad always just put 5 gallons of gas in his car, and he'd give me a dollar and say, go get the 5 gallons, but bring me the change, so that it was really economical in traveling. When it came time to get my school license, I didn't do very well. I had to take the written 3 times before I passed it. With the driving test, I had never driven Dad's new car, but he wanted me to take it for my driving test, and I was scared to death, so I didn't pass because the state trooper said that I was too cautious. I had to get more experience. Well, the next time I took my Model A, I got the same guy, and he accused me of trying to kill him. So I didn't pass then either, so it was the 3rd time. It was very nice in Des Moines as far as the police were concerned. The school license was good any time of the day or night or any time of the week, so that I could do lots of driving.